on this episode of Postcards.
You know, I come back to Worthington to visit is one thing, but to come back to town to perform, it's a circle of life that has great significance.
So I do a lot of commissions for people, but I love it especially when they let me get in there, they're vulnerable, and let me just show their emotion.
The tradition of the popcorn stand is so important to people that have grown up in Granite Falls or the surrounding area.
This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. The Arrowwood Resort and Conference Center, your ideal choice for Minnesota resorts, offering luxury townhomes, 18 holes of golf, Darling Reflections Spa, Big Splash Water Park, and much more. Alexandria, Minnesota. Explore hundreds of lakes, trails, and attractions for a great vacation or a place to hold an event. ExploreAlex.com. Tri-State Brain and Spine Institute, with locations in Alexandria, Edina, Crookston, and Maple Grove. Doctors dedicated to evaluating and treating all types of brain and spine problems, no matter how complex.
Nothing looks the same anymore as it used to back in those days. So if you didn't know it, you know, from about 40 years ago, really just a memory, so. Over the years, whenever I come back to town, you know, I take my drive through town. It's just a kind of a little ritual that we've always done. I drive down 3rd Avenue here, and I always look over at this building over here because when it comes to the music, you know, that became part of our lives over the years, you know, I guess I'd have to say that I think it originated over there. My dad came home from work one day, and he had a box in his truck. In the box was a contraption. He pulled it out. It was an accordion. And that wasn't a very popular instrument back then. It's even less popular these days. But nevertheless, he brought it home. He gave it to me as a gift. He had bought it at that store right there. Well, it's not there anymore. The store that was there. The store was called Friesen Music Center. I remember it just like it was yesterday. Pete and Elsie Friesen ran it. And it was just a little local hometown music store, but it was hopping, it was jamming. Every kind of instrument you could imagine was in there. I took that accordion. They gave me a few lessons. They taught me how to play it. I didn't play it a lot because, for the most part, I was kind of embarrassed to bring it to school. But I did play it for a grade school talent contest one time. Later on, as the years went by, I became the church organist, and the Catholic Church is just right next door here. And that I kind of loved. It was an odd thing because, you know, I was in rock bands then in high school, and it's kind of it's an odd thing, you know, to be playing in a rock band on Friday night and then Sunday morning playing a pipe organ in the Catholic Church. But in a way, it's kind of cool because pipe organ is a very powerful instrument. I was married when I was 19 or 20. So my wife and I, we were high school sweethearts. So she was 19, I was 20. So right after high school, we got married, and then that's how you did it back in those days. You got married young.
I first met Paul when he and Kathy were in high school. They're both graduates of Worthington Senior High School, and they were always together. I think Paul saw Kathy, and it was love at first sight, and they were constant companions and best of friends.
We've known each other for more than a couple of decades. When I reminisce on that, I've been in the gift industry for many years. And about 2 decades ago, I had this guy by the name of Paul stop in my store. And he told me, this was around Christmas time, and he said, you know, I think I'm getting out of the music business. He said, it's just too hard. I'm raising a family, and I've got to have more security in what I do.
I said that?
You said that to me. And the interesting thing was, within a year was when your story started to unfold. And you found out about your parents, all of your parents, and you came back to my store a year later. And I could tell you had a sense of confidence, as you've always had, but you actually had a sense of purpose. You realized that you actually had a story to tell.
Imagine getting a call one night. You could put yourself in my position real easy. The phone rings, you answer it. Hey, bro, I'm your brother. And your first thought is, well, I didn't know I had a brother. Well, and the next thing is, by the way, you are Lakota. What? Well, imagine hearing that one time. And so I had no idea I was Native American. So you're hearing a lot of information in almost a split second. It changes your life. It kind of, there's a transformation that happens instantly. You know, I've done some reading here. I've done a lot of motivational reading. It's what they would call a paradigm shift. You know, in a split second, everything that you've seen now, it's still there, but you see it completely different. It takes on a new form. When we came back home, it was only that first weekend where, when we started to tell our life story to our new family, we realized right away that, man, we had been given special opportunity. We really did have good fortune as a young person. If I had remained on the reservation, life would have been really quite difficult. Certainly music would have never been in our lives. Our family was poor, and times were tough back in those times, the 50s and 60s, back on our reservation. You know, somebody buying you instruments and allowing you to take lessons and put a band together, it would have never happened. So that happened to us on, you know, being off the reservation. So now our new family, realizing that, said, you should really use that music. You should go out into the world. Now you can represent us. You can represent who you really are. You can be a musician, but now you can be a Native American musician. You can use this new culture. And of course, that's all it took to go, wow, yeah, here we go. You know, our music is different. I try not to place any expectations on our audience or what we can really do musically. Because once you do that, it limits you a little bit. The one thing that I hope that we can do is to express the voice of a culture that hasn't really had a voice in mainstream entertainment, musically speaking. It's just starting to emerge right now, and I refer to it as pioneering one of the last musical frontiers. So I hope that we represent a voice for a culture. I hope we do it in a positive way, in a time when I think our country and the world needs a positive voice. it's a real delicate thing. We've had to walk a fine line that a lot of music groups haven't had to. And so we're kind of confined to a world of underground music to a certain extent, but that's not a bad place. Because when you try to maintain the values and the virtues of a culture, and when you try to hang on to the respect of the traditional ways of a culture, but yet try to advance it up into modern times, it's a difficult process, and it just requires patience. I mean, we're 20 years into this, and in many ways, it's just like we're getting started. And so we're careful. We've turned down a lot of work. We've turned down a lot of opportunities with managers and agents just for that reason. So where that leaves you is kind of at a point where you're somewhat in control of your destiny, more than some groups are. But you just have to take the high road. High road is a slow road, but it's a rewarding one. Yeah, you guys want to walk in for a second? We'll walk in.
Tomorrow. Yeah, I'm coming to your concert.
You are?
Yeah, I am.
Cool.
You just missed Carrie.
I saw.
Oh,
No,
did
I
you
saw
see
her.
her?
They were driving out, and I saw them over there. You know,
Yep, Nancy was bringing them.
we didn't make any plans. We're just kind of. I'm taking a little walk through town here, so I just wanted to.
Come on.
All right, we're right. We will. Give me 5. Oh, hey, man, you're good. Tomorrow we're gonna play for a concert over in the Memorial Auditorium right across from your school here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you from it?
I grew up here. I went to school right in here
Oh.
when I was about your age.
This is probably the biggest show for Paul and Kathy coming back to Worthington. We've played here before, but this show with everything coming together, the time, the years, Paul and Kathy just celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary. So from coming home to have people that come up to him just as we pulled into Worthington, Paul, I remember you coming to the music store, and you know, we remember you as a high school, you know, they remember, you know, there's all this, so you've got your whole life that's all coming down to this show.
Everyone remembers Paul and Kathy and their parents here in town, and people are acquainted with Paul and Kathy's children, Shane and Nicole, and to know that they're part of Brule, and now that Paul and Kathy's grandchildren are a part of Brule, just extends the family connections to Worthington. And Worthington is very proud to forever claim Paul and Kathy as still hometown kids.
I was fortunate. I guess I was blessed that I was allowed to grow up in those times, back in this community, back in this part of the country, in the Midwest, the whole thing. You don't realize it until you're in the last cycle of your life. Then you get a glimpse of the bigger picture, and you get a chance to see how it all fit together. You know, I come back to Worthington to visit is one thing, but to come back to town to perform, it's it's a circle of life that has great significance. To have it all come back around and to see how it helps other people, see how it can help another culture, see how it can hopefully bring pride to a community. I don't know. All I can say is that I feel like one of the luckiest people around.
I'm a painter of mostly faces, not just portraits, but I capture the emotion. I've always been really creative, and art kind of runs in my family, and I had raised my kids and was interested in the community ed class. Started with watercolor for about 4 years, and that was a love-hate relationship. And then about 6 years ago, took my first oil painting class with Myron Selberg. Never looked back. I've been getting awards, and just the way that it works is how my brain works. You go dark to light, and I just love oil painting. From day one, I like contrast. I like the strong light and darks. It's the emotion that I love to capture. So as soon as I painted in oil, you go dark to light, and you can get these intense colors, and I can dig through to find the little nuances so much easier. And it was like coming home when I came to oil painting. The first painting I completed was a portrait of my daughter. And that took an award right away through the American Federation for Advertising in St. Cloud, and I've never looked back. A lot of times when I see a face that I want to paint, there's some emotion that they're showing on their face, or they're being vulnerable, so I can get in and I can find this and I can bring it out in a different way. Sometimes it's someone who has really strong features, and it just looks intriguing to paint. Sometimes it's just how the light is hitting something, and the light and the shadows just excite me, and so then I want to do that. A lot of times it's to show people that everything can be beautiful. It doesn't matter what you think of yourself or an object, it can be beautiful. I think I'm just a feeler, and my way of expressing it is visually through the art. And I think I connect to people who are hurting. And so I bring their emotion out and help them deal with that, maybe as a way of just healing. Oil painting is like having piles of butter that you tint with different colors, and then you have your brushes, of course, that are all different varieties of softness, and each artist finds their own, but it's like you dip that brush in that butter, and it's almost like finger painting when you're in kindergarten. It's just this wonderful response of the canvas you're painting on, the brushes, you're pushing this paint around, and then when you capture something that no one has done before or seen before, or you can show people the world from your own view, it's just a way of creating and letting my heart out and to share it. I love being in rural Minnesota. I grew up on a farm in South Dakota, and so I love the country. I love the small. I love just the people that you meet and knowing everyone. I love the lakes, and so the advantages of being here is, you know, I can teach people things that they can't get otherwise, and reach people that maybe would never be able to see that they have a gift in art. So currently I have a show of a full body of work at 6th Avenue Wine and Ale here in Alexandria, And that is the first complete full body of work that I've done. It's 13 paintings, and they're all 30 by 40. So they're all pretty good size. It is a large face, each person, and it's half dark and it's half lit. So it's very strong with lights and shadows. It's called Listen, A Silent Conversation. And it's about, you know, everyone nowadays is so stuck in their phone or some kind of media, and so it's about having connection with the eye. So the focus is on the eye. I have an age range from, I think, 12 or 13 years old up to about in the 70s, male, female, all different races. When I painted each person, I asked them, what do you want people to most understand about you? And so each one has an answer that's posted next to their painting. So as you look at this painting and you have this connection through this eye, because remember, I'm about emotion and the connection of it. And you see that, you read the answer that they have, you look at it again, and it's almost like you're getting to know someone, you're connecting. The great thing about the show is everyone that I've painted is from this community or has had business in this community. So it's another way of showing who you're living with. You know, we all make up this rural community, we all make up family, kind of, in a way, and we're all connected, and it's just a great way of coming to know people. When I started painting about 6 years ago, I never would have dreamt where I am now because of the awards. I've been in an international show 6 times. Taken awards at that twice. I've taken awards that no other artist has gotten before. So I've been very blessed. Where it goes, I don't know. I'll do the work, but I'll let things happen as they need to. I would like to grow it. I love to do commission works, so I do a lot of commissions for people, but I love it especially when they let me get in there, they're vulnerable, and let me just show their emotion.
Are you a fan of postcards? Follow us on your favorite social media platform to get the latest news on upcoming episodes, behind the scenes, and more.
Behind me is the Granite Falls Popcorn Stand. It's currently owned by the Granite Falls Kiwanis organization. The popcorn stand has been and we're real proud of this fact, it's been in continuous operation since 1922, and now we have recently learned back in June by one of the family members of the founders of the popcorn stand that it actually started August of 1919. So we're just on the heels of our 100th anniversary, which we're going to have a big celebration here for in that year. The founders of the popcorn stand were Julius and Fred Ernston. They were 2 brothers, and Fred and Julius actually started the popcorn stand as a result of a city celebration at the time. They wanted to take part in the celebration, so they decided to start popping popcorn and serving it at the celebration. There's a lot of history that goes behind this popcorn stand, and we're real proud of the fact, we, the Granite Falls Kiwanis organization, is real proud of the fact that it's been in continuous operation. In 2002, the popcorn stand was donated to the Granite Falls Kiwanis organization, and it's been a very good service to the community and many communities in the area. We have people from all over the place that come here to visit the popcorn stand every summer, and it's always enjoyable when you're volunteering down here at the popcorn stand and people come back to town for class reunions, family reunions. They'll find excuses to come to Granite Falls just to go here. We have people that go from South Dakota that have lake homes in northern Minnesota, and they make a special trip and swing through Granite Falls to just buy popcorn on their way back to Sioux Falls or whatever. And it's so fun to hear those stories. Granite Falls Popcorn Stand is 36 square feet in size. It's 6 by 6. We're limited on what we can serve, but on the other hand, it kind of preserves the tradition of what's been served over the years. So in the popcorn stand, we serve popcorn. We have 2 sizes, small and large. Then the other big thing we sell is 1919 root beer. 1919 root beer has a real tie to Granite Falls. Andrew Volstead, Andrew Volstead Museum is just a couple blocks down the street here. Andrew is the one who authored the legislation that started Prohibition in the year 1919. We also have another individual that grew up in Granite Falls by the name of Al Arneson. Al developed the recipe for 1919 root beer, and I believe that was maybe back in the 1960s as well. The tradition of the popcorn stand is so important to the community, and it's so important to people that have grown up in Granite Falls or the surrounding area and just love to come back. So for that reason, we find it very important to keep the popcorn stand going and operating. You get a lot of personal satisfaction out of working here at the popcorn stand, volunteering of your time, serving the community, visiting with folks, and hearing the stories that get shared with us.
Have an idea for postcards? Send your story suggestions to postcards@pioneer.org. This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. The Arrowwood Resort and Conference Center, your ideal choice for Minnesota resorts, offering luxury townhomes, 18 holes of golf, Darling Reflections Spa, Big Splash Water Park, and much more. Alexandria, Minnesota. Explore hundreds of lakes, trails, and attractions for a great vacation or a place to hold an event. ExploreAlex.com. Tri-State Brain and Spine Institute, with locations in Alexandria, Edina, Crookston, and Maple Grove. Doctors dedicated to evaluating and treating all types of brain and spine problems, no matter how complex.